Thanks so much for turning to Mastering Counseling. We're so glad our audience is back with us. And today I'm very excited to introduce Lynn Louise Wonders, whose practice is called Wonders Counseling Services. Thanks so much for giving us your time today, Lynn.
Thanks, Becky. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you asking me.
Well, you have been in this world since as early as 2007, and Wonders Counseling Services was launched in 2012. But why don't you talk to us about the beginning of all that, your earlier practice, and then how you built your own practice?
Yeah, well, actually, my career started in 2001, and then once I worked my way through associate level and all of that and became fully licensed, I started my own practice in a suburb of Atlanta where there wasn't a lot of resources that focused on children and families. And so I opened a private practice back in 2007 called Marietta Counseling for Children and Adults. And I brought in other clinicians, and I started a group practice there that was very successful, still there today, owned now by someone that was my intern many years ago.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
and during that time, between 2007 and 2012, there was rapid growth, and a lot of people noticed that I was able to build a business pretty quickly and successfully. And a lot of people started coming to me, asking me, how do you do it? And I started sort of helping people along the way in terms of building their practices. But also what happened during that time is I learned that I enjoy the teaching, the writing, the consulting, and the clinical work more than managing people and managing a big group practice.
Hmm.
So I sold that practice and went in and opened Wonders Counseling Services, which started off as a solo practice and then just became a small boutique practice where I had just a few other clinicians at one time. But it was pretty much designed to have prongs of clinical work for counseling clients, primarily children and families and couples, and then a prong that was focused on continuing education training, and then a prong for consultation and supervision services. And
Hmm.
so that's where we are today. And lots happened since 2012, obviously, in the world and in the field of mental health, and things just continue to evolve and grow.
Mm-hmm. I like that, a boutique practice, just a little smaller and focused. It's a
Yeah.
fun word. Um, so now with your current practice, Wonder since 2012, and I know you said you didn't want to manage a large practice. Are you the only therapist doing all three prongs, or do you have other people who are part of it and working with you?
At this point, I'm the only one because I closed the physical practice actually before the pandemic. Just in I don't know, it kind of so happened that I closed it and went online with a lot of the work that I was doing solo.
Wow.
And then the pandemic happened, and I was already set up. So I
Wow.
was already doing, online therapy. I was doing online programs and supervision and training. So for me, it was pretty much an easy shift
Wow.
because I had already started that. In fact, I was one of the very first ones way back before webinars were really a thing, doing continuing education online, doing teleseminars before we had webinars. And so that distance reach and that distance connection thing kind of came naturally for me. So at this point,
Mm.
I see a small caseload of clinical clients, and then most of my work is in teaching, continuing education, writing, and other programs. I'm an author. I have a line of children's books and
Mm.
a book for child therapists about navigating high conflict divorce cases. So I just have a lot of things where I'm really connected to the greater community and mental health. And I work a lot with other therapists rather than so much the clinical work at this point.
Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation. Um, let's talk specifically about how you felt there was a need for, I believe you said marriage and family counseling, especially, and I don't know if you said marriage, but I know if families are going through divorce, you did a lot of work there. Let's
Yeah.
talk about your call to that and how that looked then and maybe how it looks now.
Yeah. So back when I was doing more of the clinical work, I didn't do it on purpose, but I found myself in working with a lot of families, specifically serving the needs of the children in the families where the parents were going through higher levels of conflict in divorce and custody dispute related cases. And I ended up in court a lot.
Mm,
And that ended up being an area of specialty that I never would have consciously chosen, but I just landed there.
mhm,
And along the way, realized, whoa, this is a very sticky wicket. And this is a slippery slope. And we as therapists are not prepared for this.
mm,
And so through my experience wading through the sticky wicket, and dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of consequences of those kinds of cases, I realized there was a need in the field to help therapists be better prepared for those cases, especially
mm,
therapists who see child clients and couples. I do couples work as well. So I ventured out into writing a book and creating some training and some consultation services around that. And I still find to this day that there are a lot of therapists who feel very lonely in their experiences with those cases, because a lot of times it is very sticky, and things
mhm,
happen that people don't want to really talk about, and they
mm.
need to have training and support around that. So I think it's sort of a void in our graduate training and so forth. I don't think that there's enough preparation for
Yeah.
therapists in these kinds of those kinds of cases. It's just because it brings up issues um that sort of shift the needs in the clinical situation for the therapist to attend to. Um,
Mhm.
it becomes more than just clinical. It becomes a lot of times it becomes legal, and
Yeah.
there are ethical issues and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were talking. I have some experience in foster care and adoption, and when you end up going to court and working with lawyers, things are always so dicey and not really how you think they may come out. So I'm sure you had to work with different lawyers and kind of talk with them for guidance as you helped other therapists and families.
Well, certainly there was times when I had to have my own representation, when
Mm,
I was, pulled into certain cases, and that's why we have liability insurance and to help us with all of those kinds of things. But definitely there's space for that in terms of making sure that we know what we're getting into, and so we're not saying the wrong things and doing the wrong things, and
mhm.
it really is a whole different realm.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I don't think too many graduate programs are involving the legal end of things. It's
Not
like
really.
learn as you go, which could be dangerous and costly. So thank
Yes.
you for doing that work. Um, let's talk about your authorship of a children's series. Let's talk about the names of those and what the focus is, and how people can get them if they need them for their own practice.
Oh yeah, that's been a really fun project for me. The series of books I have is called Miss Piper's Playroom, and it all started interestingly with a little dream that I had about this character, Miss Piper, who's
Mm,
a therapist, and she uses play and creative, expressive interventions with children in her playroom. And the series of books, at this point, I think I don't remember, I have 7 or 8 books in the series, but each book features a different client, except for the very first one, which is introduces Miss Piper and coming to therapy for children and families. Um, but it's illustrated beautifully by an illustrator I found in Ukraine, and the character is very much Miss Piper is one that advocates for children to celebrate who they are. We have one about an ADHDer, and we have one about a child who identifies as autistic. And I've collaborated with others in a number of these books to make sure that we're providing information that's representational, racially, ethnically, sensitive to neurodivergence needs, in the child therapy field. So the idea of the whole series was to serve as a tool that therapists can use with their child clients, for parents to prepare children for going to therapy, and also sort of normalizing anxiety, social anxiety, ADHD, grief and loss, and just the idea of going to counseling, what it's about, and how it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be anything scary. It can be something that can be really, really supportive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Can we get these on Amazon? I know people, I'm a school counselor and I work closely with the special ed team and we all love our books, of course.
Yeah,
And I don't know that anyone has are they on
they're on
Amazon?
Amazon. Yeah, if you just look up
Okay.
Miss Piper's Playroom,
Yeah.
Louise Wonders, you'll see the whole series there. And I have
Okay.
another couple of books that are not in that series, but are children's books that are also therapeutic and educational. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
I'll be adding more in the future. I've just taken a couple of years off from that work so I can focus on other things. Lots of passion
Right,
projects.
right. No, I love that. And I'm thinking, I could be wrong, but because it's a series and the way you talked about it, it's just like something you can continually add on as you have a new idea.
Yes,
Wow,
definitely.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Very cool. I will be looking into that for sure. And I'm sure our listeners, we always love new resources. And especially, I think when you take maybe not that counseling is an adult thing, but something more serious and then can put it in a kid's mindset is awesome. So
Yeah.
very cool. Um, so you mentioned about how you are doing a lot of continuing education for other therapists.
Mhm.
And you've been doing that a long time as well. Um, Talk to us about maybe what your webinars are like, or is it all online and people purchase the lessons or books? Talk about that world.
Yeah. So, if anybody is interested in seeing specifically, I'll just point you to my website, wonderscounseling.com. And if you go under the courses tab, you'll see all the different kinds of courses and things I have. But I have a learning platform that is on that's referenced there, that has my own trainings, and I also host a few other people that I find wonderful that also have a few courses on the platform. And most of them are play therapy related. Some are parenting related, some are general. There's one about social emotional learning for preschoolers on there. There's a navigating high conflict divorce and so forth. But so what I've been doing since 2010 is leading seminars, or they used to be seminars, now they're webinars, but online, and then recording them and having them available. And most of them are available for continuing education credits. Some of them are only available for learning enrichment, which is where the price is a lot lower, but they can just get them just to learn the material. Most
Mm,
of them are around 2 hours. Some are 3 or 4 hours. I have a few 1 hour ones on there. And so they were recorded live, most of them. So there's some interaction with the participants that happen to be there live. And then there are handouts that go along with them. And my most present project is the mindfulness-based therapy training institute, which is going to be launching this year in 2024, which is going to
mm,
be a separate platform, but it's all connected under the same umbrella. And that is going to have tracks for training under the topic of mindfulness-based play therapy, mindfulness-based work with couples, and mindfulness-based work with adult individual clients. Because that mindfulness-based work is something I've been actually doing since long before I was a therapist, for over 30
oh,
years.
wow.
So it's a way of bringing it all together. And it's something I've been using in my work anyway. It's just
Mm-hmm.
bringing it more to the forefront. But I'm really passionate about teaching, and the feedback that I get is that my trainings are rich in content, but also engaging and interesting. And it really is because it's born out of a passion that I
Mm-hmm.
love helping people to get inspired and to have something new that lights them up and helps them to carry on with their work. And I like to think of it as throwing a pebble in the lake and seeing the ripples effect,
Mm, for
of knowing
sure.
that if I'm helping one person learn, they're helping other people, and that's helping other people.
Right, right. No, that's amazing. I mean, I'm kind of wide-eyed over here thinking, how are you managing all of these things? But I guess if you've been doing it a long time too, it's just so natural to talk about. Um, but yeah, that's awesome that it's all on the website. And do you do any more in-person seminars or
Oh,
even
yes.
in-person therapy? How is that shifted? And I do want to go back to how you, sorry, let's pause that question. I think
Okay.
it's amazing that you were online ahead of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And were you just flooded with A, people needing a counselor, or B, other counselors saying, what do we do? Talk
Yeah.
about that time.
Right. Okay. So let me just clarify. Before the pandemic, I was doing online training, online like continuing education training, consultation, and like practice building support for therapists. I was doing a little bit of distance. At the time we called it distance counseling. I had gone and gotten certified in distance counseling before we had this kind of a platform. It was
Mm,
telephone, email, way back in the day. So I was
okay.
doing some of that as a um, an add-on to be able to meet with adults or parents of my child clients when needed, when we couldn't get them into the office. I wasn't really
Okay.
doing distance therapy with child clients. And when the pandemic came along, we all had to go online for the most part. So some brave souls stayed in person the whole time, but most people went online. And so the idea of doing play therapy over Zoom or what other platform people were using was brand new and really scary and for a lot of people. And because I
Mm-hmm.
had been doing online work, it came very naturally for me to help people to
Right.
adapt, and so I partnered with several people and we just basically got really creative. And a lot of therapists ended up doing telehealth based play therapy. And I contributed a couple chapters to that book that's written or edited by Dr. Jessica Stone called Telemental Health Play Therapy. Um, but I personally did not um, love doing play therapy online. I'm an in-person play therapist. I
Mm,
think that three-dimensional interaction and play with the toys for me and for my clients was really important. So as soon as I could get back to in-person, I did.
okay.
Um, I will say though that there are some that have done really well, and some children do really well with the digital medium. They're digital natives. They were born into this digital age, and there are a lot of therapists who do really well with digital-based play therapy, and more power to them. That is not my
Mm-hmm.
area of choice or expertise, in terms of the work that I do now.
Right.
Um, but I think that what's happened in the field of mental health overall, beyond child therapy and play therapy, is that we have all been exposed by force to
Mm-hmm.
this reality and the possibilities of what we can do. So we can reach more people, we can work with people in rural areas. And so now the therapy that I do, my clinical caseload is almost all adult clients, and it's all online because I'm licensed in a state that I don't live in any longer. Long story, we
Oh,
don't need to go
okay.
into. So it allows for that,
Mm-hmm.
even though I was licensed in a state, my husband got a job in another state, and I moved. I can carry my practice with me and work and continue to see clients online. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of beautiful things about this. I'm not seeing child clients online. Every once in a while I'll have a former client that will need a patch session or something, but um, I think that the face of mental health has changed since the pandemic
For
because of
sure.
everything that we had to do that has opened up a lot of other avenues. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sitting back and watching how even the way I used to support people in building a private practice has changed. And there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
people like you doing wonderful podcasts and offering coaching services and all these practice building kind of things that reflect the new age, I think, of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of sitting back watching this in awe myself and watching
Yeah.
how a lot of things are changing. And it's going to be interesting to see how it continues to evolve very rapidly.
Right, right. Well, I love that you were so prepared digitally, but yet personally you prefer, especially for the play therapy, to be in person and, just, I don't know, hands on the items. And I can see that. I mean, we did online school and then school, and they don't relate exactly, but yeah, I think I'm the same. Like, you love the fact that you can be online and there's great things, but especially with smaller children, that being right with them to see all parts of their movement and all that, I think is so important. So,
Yeah, I agree.
um, yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit actually, we haven't talked about it in a few episodes, but a little bit about self-care and boundaries. We know you're doing a lot of writing and seeing people and helping other therapists and launching this new institute. How do you make sure that you are up to the task?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an important question. And just based on something else you mentioned about how do you do it all, kind of that I get that a lot. I want to just say that um, I, I don't want anybody to think that the way that I'm doing things is the way everybody should do things. I just happen to be an ADHDer myself, and and it's a gift in that I'm wildly creative. And I
Mhm.
have my mechanisms for keeping myself on track. So I am
Mhm.
able to do a lot of different things, but not everybody's cut out of that cloth, and that is fine.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have one niche and one thing you do and you want to do that one thing well, go for it.
Of course.
I like the variety, and I'm very artistic and creative that way. And so tied into the self-care, part of my self-care is that it's good for me to have a variety of projects. But what one thing I've realized is that I can't pile it all on at the same time. Like I'm having to take off last year and this year from writing any children's books or doing any of that work because I'm focusing
Mhm.
on some other projects. So it's
Right.
kind of like knowing, okay, maybe I can have two or three projects going at one time, but any more than that starts to feel like a crazy juggling act, and I start to get overwhelmed, and that's not healthy. So I've learned to use calendars and use planning and to be very organized in my own way with my ADHD brain, in order to make sure that I'm staying on task as much as possible.
Mm.
So I
Mhm.
use timers and I use the calendar, and I live by the calendar. I'm
Yeah.
constantly looking at it, and if there's a glitch and a mix up with something, that can throw me off. So, but see, so that's one thing about self-care. The other piece is that is really important to practice what I preach, which is the mindfulness piece, which requires slowing down and just breathing and sitting back and watching and reflecting and getting plenty of rest and making sure that I'm taking time for nature. I'm a big nature
Mm.
enthusiast as well. So it's about finding relative balance. And I say
Mhm.
relative balance because your balance might look different than my balance. For me, it might mean I can do several different things all at once. You might have a situation where you're really only able to do one thing at a time, and then rotate. So I think that each person has to figure out what works for them so that they are feeling rested and nourished, and feeling fulfilled in the work that they're doing. And there's sometimes when a project that I've been working on doesn't feel exciting or fulfilling to me any longer, and it's time to just set it aside for a while. And that's a part of self-care as well.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, definitely people are wired so differently in how much they want to take on. And I find myself a little bit like you. I like having different things. But definitely the calendar is so huge. And sometimes trying to then I like variety too. Like I love being a school counselor because no day is the same and it's absolutely never boring. But yeah, with my own goals and things, you have to separate that time out. And like I could never podcast 8 hours a day, right? But I love that,
Right.
I can go do this for a little bit and then pop in and do this. So yeah, it's cool that way.
Yeah.
Um, what advice, I don't know, with your continuing education, very important, do you have a lot of connections with universities and master's programs because of that? And or what advice would you be giving to people in those programs that are about to be certified or have just completed their programs?
Yeah, so generally speaking, a lot of graduate programs have that, what I would consider preliminary training that students get to prepare them to begin the journey of going out into the field of mental health and working. Continuing education is something that we are required by our licensing boards to have on a regular basis, to stay up to date on the most current, learnings and knowledge that's coming out. But also, after you get out of your master's program, you want to begin to, specialize in a certain area, or, hone in on a particular area of interest, or you might grow and expand and decide, oh, I really want to learn this, or I want to learn more about that, or I want to work with this population. So the continuing education um, courses that I teach, and you ask me if I teach in person. I do. I teach. I lead in person conferences all over the country. I've been to Ireland. I've done online stuff all over the world as well. But I do in person as well. My university connections are more so that I have colleagues that are professors and administrators in various play therapy and child and family and adolescent therapy programs, so that we know each other, because they have to have their continuing education too, so we know each other in those realms. And so it's not so much a direct connection, except for sometimes they'll, like, I'm leading an in-person event in Nashville in March this year in 2024, and I've got students coming from various local universities at a discount to come and learn with me. But then I also have therapists who have been around for a while that are coming to learn with me. So I think we can all learn together, but there's definitely something about how much information you already have and experience that you have that lends to the kind of training you're going to go to have. So if you're still in graduate school, you're probably not going to do CE courses, although you may. Some will be coming to my training. Because they're play therapy, play therapy related courses. But if it was a more advanced play therapy training or a couples counseling training, I wouldn't probably see students from a graduate program there, because they're still learning at the level that they need to learn at in order to do, what they need to do at their level of development.
Right. Just one other thing on the CE courses. Do they build on each other? Like, are a lot of them individual? Like, here's your one course on, one part of play therapy, or is it like a whole series usually?
Oh, that's a good question. So, most of my courses on my current platform are what I would call a la carte trainings, where they're standalone, where you can learn about, using cognitive behavioral play therapy with OCD, or you could learn about how to use prescriptive play therapy with families, or you can come and learn about um, basic, like a creative and expressive play therapy act interventions with children of this age. So the way that I teach is prescriptive and trans theoretical. My mindfulness-based play therapy program that I'm designing and I'm working on right now, writing a book about that right now, is trans theoretical. So what we do is we look at the seminal and historical theories in play therapy and psychotherapy for children, and we then look at how we can utilize a mindfulness practice through those theoretical models. So if someone was mostly or only child-centered, or if somebody was a Jungian play therapist, or they would still be able to utilize that. So my aim at teaching people is to meet them where they are, or have them come to where I am in that particular training, and if it's a fit for them. Whereas some people teach only from one seminal theory, and they have a series and that kind of thing. I will have a certification program in mindfulness-based play therapy that will be available. I'm not sure if it'll be this year or in 2025, but I am working on that. But it's still rooted in being trans theoretical, because I believe that we need to be able to see that we can either be a purist and come from a particular theory and still use this model, or you can use many different theories and be prescriptive depending on the needs of the client that's in front of you.
Very interesting, for sure. Thank you for clarifying that and giving us all options, especially people who are already licensed and needing, wanting to know more, or really want to launch into becoming a play therapist. That's awesome. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't get to talk about today that you would want the audience to know about?
Oh, not really. We really covered a lot of ground. I just would welcome anyone who wants to learn more about my resources. I will say one thing: I do send out I do a curated resource newsletter, and I do it myself. I don't hire anybody to help me with it. I may be getting some help soon. It's a lot of work, but every week I try to aim for every week I send out a newsletter. So if anybody wants to sign up for that and get those resources, they can sign up under the resources tab at wonderscounseling.com. So I'm kind of well
Awesome.
known in the field as being a resource hub, and people will come to me, and I have a group on Facebook called Growing Your Child and Family Counseling Career. If
Mm,
people want to come and join that group, and we just
yeah,
have discussions, and I really am passionate about just being of support to
yeah,
people, and I like to point people to other trainers and other consultants and other experts. It's not all about
right,
me. It's about the fact
right.
that we're all in this together. And there's some incredible colleagues that I have that do just great work in this world. And I'm always happy to point people to who they need to go learn from if they're interested in a particular topic that's not in my wheelhouse.
Very collaborative is what I'm hearing for sure. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for giving us your time today with all the other things you have going on. I feel like we've delved into a wealth of resources that people can look on your website and possibly purchase your books. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Becky.
Yes, and to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave us questions or comments, and let us know what you're interested in talking about in the future. We look forward to future episodes where we continue to explore the worlds of counseling, therapy, the business side of all that, and just hearing from all the people in this field. Have a wonderful day.